See that picnic table on the sign? Is that language? Is that arrow language? I submit to you that they are not, because I can interpret the meaning of that picnic table and that arrow, right? There's a picnic area right there, regardless of what language I speak, right? That's meaningful to me, whether English or Spanish or Icelandic or Chinese is my language of thought and reference. Now, right above that, there are words, diamond, rock, which only means something if I'm familiar with the conventions of reading a particular language, in this case English. So diamond rock, that's language. The picnic table and the arrow, that's not language. That's significant, it's meaningful, and human beings have developed the technology, and it is a technology, of communicating to other human beings messages without being present to communicate those messages. And recently, an article published by two scholars in Germany on PNAS has attracted a ton of attention because of sensationalist claims that you can see in popular media, that it claims that writing, or something, a somewhat vague, although somewhat scholarly in use term like proto-writing, was in existence 40,000 years ago, rather than, as is usually claimed and as is generally understood by scholars, that writing developed about 5,000 years ago. Now, this was first brought to my attention only last night as I record this. This fellow David, I suppose I don't know his last name, who comes to my monthly talks in Loveland, Colorado, pointed out to me this article, and I thought, well, you know, this is an impressive claim. It's an impressive discovery, but it is being over sensationalized in popular media, again, as saying that writing existed in the Stone Age. So I've read the article, and my understanding of it, which I think is the fair and intended understanding of the original scholarly article, is that on a variety of cultural artifacts from about 40,000 years ago, from sites in Central Europe, there is a collection of signs that probably had culturally understood, negotiated meanings. Now, that's incredible in and of itself, right? But these culturally understood, negotiated meanings are like that picnic table or that arrow. They're not like the words, right? There's no way to go from these signs to having any sense of the language behind them, right? Which, by the way, at that time would not have been ancestral to German or French or any other language of Central Europe. The ancestors of those languages came in from the East with the Indo-Europeans about 5,000 years ago. What we have are, for example, figurines in mammoth ivory of mammoths that have series of X-like marks on them. This is just one example of these various marks. And these X-like marks are strongly correlated, as I understand the article, with these figurines of animals, mammoths, horses, things like that, from this society. Whereas other kinds of marks tend to be correlated with other kinds of products. There is one that has a more humanoid figure on one side and then has a series of dots on the other. And there seems to be a sort of ordering to this. There seem to be particular marks that are particularly associated with particular cultural products. So, for example, there's X's with animals, which might mean something like a tally of how many of those animals have been killed or sighted or something. The dots on the other side of the little tablet with a humanoid figure could be counting days between something. It could be counting people, right? These seem more like tallies than anything else, right? You don't see the unrepetitive structure that you would expect of a language, right? If you read English, well, let me just show you text in a language that maybe you don't know. I'll find a page of Icelandic or something to put on the screen here. And there are probably words that you'll see more than once. Og means and, means is, Oth means that or two, and different meanings of English, that and two. You probably see those a few times. I have no idea what text I'm going to put on here. But you don't see them in a row, right? So same thing with any language. You can recognize language fairly fast because it's not going to have repetitive symbols in direct contact with each other, right? You need nouns next to verbs, next to prepositions, and things like that. And you don't get that kind of arrangement of signs in these Stone Age artifacts. You do get a pattern that apparently is not pure repetition, right? Not everything is just a big long sequence of all the same sign. So there's potentially something a lot like a tally going on there, right? Like I saw X many of this animal, killed X many of that animal, something like that. And that's getting fairly close to what could be fairly called proto-writing in the scholarly sense. For example, the proto-cuneiform signs, which the authors make comparison to from the city of Uruk, and what would become Sumeria, maybe was already Sumeria, but we don't know that it was Sumeria because they're not writing Sumerian. They have particular signs for particular products, and then they have particular signs for the numerals, right? They're tallying beer and sheep and barley and things like that in these proto-cuneiform tablets. This could be something like that, which represents a great conceptual leap, right? Someone is saying this mark represents mammoth or whatever, right? This mark represents, one mammoth. This mark represents 5, and maybe they've even made the leap of saying, it's not just that 5 marks of 1 mean 5, but there's like a tally that actually means the number 5. Hard to say. Maybe that could actually be deciphered, but it won't give any clue as to what these people were speaking, right? We don't get a sentence in their language from this, just like from that picnic table, we don't get a sentence in English, right? You could read from it, picnic table is nearby, or something like that, but that's not what it says. It is just an indication from afar, as it were, from one speaker to another of what is there. And of course, it's really remarkable to see this indication from 40,000 years ago that people are already thinking this conceptually, right? They're already thinking about how to make records, something that no other animal does to my knowledge. But we exaggerate when we call it writing, and we undersell the miracle that writing really is, right? It's not an obvious thing to do, to take what you produce with your mouth and to reproduce that in such a way that another person can read the exact words you used, right? I couldn't have come up with that. We take it for granted just because every idiot that we know can do it today, but they know they can do it because someone else came up with it, right? Writing really is a remarkable invention, and we should be respectful of those who we know developed writing independently. The Sumerians, probably the Egyptians, the Chinese, Mesoamericans, potentially people on Easter Island, all independently came to the conception of writing. But all, from what we can tell in the last 5,000 years, that could be a preservation bias. Maybe there were people writing on things that are less durable than the clay the Sumerians used, or maybe they were writing in environments that were degrading what they were writing on faster than the sands of Egypt degrade Egyptian papyrus. But not knowing that it was there doesn't entitle us to speculate that it was there. As far as we can tell, the earliest true writing still is in Sumerian cuneiforms, although these Stone Age hunters were signifying something to each other, again, more like the nature of an arrow or a picnic table sign. It's pretty cool. Well, for now, from beautiful, fatally windy Colorado, I'm wishing you all the best.